Dear Fort Wright friends and neighbors, my name is Dave Hatter, and it's been my privilege to serve as mayor of my hometown for the past 8 years, and prior to that, 16 years on city council. I'm coming to you with an important message before Election Day, November 8th, which is next Tuesday, to ask you to vote for the existing incumbent council members and Jason Collins. Well, you can see them all on this card here. So the existing incumbent council members are Bernie Wessels, Jay Weber, Margie Witt, Dave Ablen, and Scott Wall. And then again, I'm asking you to vote for Jason Collins, and I'll explain why here in just a second. So, as I mentioned, I've had the privilege of working with some of these people for many years. Many of them, like me, grew up here. Their parents lived or live here. Their kids live or lived here. I've been very fortunate. My dad still lives in the same house that he bought in 1956, and my oldest son just bought a house here in Fort Wright. So like many of our friends and neighbors, multi-generational Fort Wright residents, we choose to live here because it's an amazing community. And I and myself, as well as the current members of council and Jason Collins, committed to staying the course and making sure that Fort Wright is a great place to live, work, and play for everyone. So I wanted to take again a few seconds to explain why I'm asking you to vote for these folks. If we just walk down the ballot and we look at each of the incumbents, Dave Ablen, like me, grew up in Fort Wright. His parents lived in Fort Wright. His kids lived in Fort Wright and grew up here. Dave's lived here for about 50 years and I've been on council for 10 years. Margie Witt's lived here for about 25 years. Her family's grew up in Fort Wright. She's been on council for 5 years. Bernie Wessels has lived here for about 35 years. Same deal. Kids grew up here, been on council for 14 years. Like me, Scott Wall grew up in Fort Wright. Parents lived here, kids live here, raised his family here. And Scott, again, 60 years living experience in Fort Wright, been on council for 15 years. And then Jay Weber has lived in the city for about 50 years, raised his family here. He's been on council for 3 years. And sadly, Adam Feinauer, who is leaving us to become a deacon at St. Agnes and leaving this vacant seat, which Jason is running for. Adam spent 22 years on council. As far as I know, that is the single longest consecutive tenure on council. He's done an amazing job, going to leave huge shoes to fill. Adam is a dear friend of mine, and I know I myself and everyone on council and the staff is going to miss Adam terribly, but that does leave this open seat. So I just wanted to point out, the people who are currently serving on council are all very long-term residents of Fort Wright. Many of them have served on council for many years. They understand the community. They understand our values. They want to take Fort Wright in a positive direction forward. And I think it's safe to say, when you look at our financial situation, when you look at where we are today versus where we've come from, we're in by far the best shape we've ever been in. Despite significant tax cuts, we've cut or held taxes 6 times over the last 6 years. Our property tax rate is now at the lowest rate it's been since 2011. We also cut personal property taxes. It was a 6.5% cut in the real estate tax, and then about a 7-ish% tax cut on the personal property taxes. We're eliminating the vehicle tax. We have reduced the payroll tax. And we are now the 5th lowest taxing jurisdiction in Kenton County, and we have the lowest payroll tax in all of Kenton County. Despite the fact that we've continued to cut taxes, our property values have risen by about $150 million over the last 10 years. And we've also aggressively pursued grants, which has produced about just over $4.5 million over the last 10 years. All of that money is making it possible for us to maintain our debt-free status. We've been debt-free for many years, going all the way back to Mayor Nienaber before me. We have a capital improvements plan. We pay cash for large capital items like the street program, the new pumper, the new ambulance, 2 new police cruisers every year, the new dump truck, the new backhoe. All of these investments in infrastructure and safety equipment have all been paid for in cash. And I know that the current members of council obviously have a voting record of supporting this. I know Jason Collins supports this vision and this approach as well. The idea is, it's not our money, it's your money, it's our money collectively. We're doing everything possible to spend it as wisely as we can and allow you to keep more of your money, especially in light of the crushing inflation that we're currently seeing. On top of those things, again, significant investments in infrastructure. We've recently upgraded South Hill Civic Club. We have our rolling 5-year street program, which you can view online, and we put about $600,000+ into that every year, the volunteer park upgrade, and we have other upgrades planned. I know this council also takes the concerns of residents seriously around the Brent Springs Bridge project and the I-75 changes that'll come with it. We're trying to work closely with the Department of Transportation, the Kentucky Department of Transportation, not only to make sure there are sound barriers and aesthetic improvements, but also to allow us to improve the aesthetics of that interchange, fix the overpass, and just make it look a lot more welcoming to folks who are driving through or coming to Fort Wright. Again, we want to be a destination. We know we're one of the most desirable communities in the greater Cincinnati region. Smart Asset recently ranked us as the number 6 suburb in a large metropolitan area throughout the entire country based on affordability, jobs, and livability. And while we love those sort of external kudos, we think it validates the approach the council has taken over the past couple of decades. I mean, we're really here to serve our residents and our businesses, to make this a family-friendly place for everyone, to make this a welcoming place for everyone. Again, to make this the best place to live, work, and play in the greater Cincinnati metropolitan region. And I believe that you can clearly see a track record of that with the incumbent council members. And now I'm going to again ask you to vote for Jason Collins. I've known Jason for about 20 years. He chose to make Fort Wright his home. He's raised his family here. His daughters are friends with my daughter. They all went to school together. They played soccer together. And one of the ways I got to know Jason was because he was the head soccer coach for a team my daughter played on with his daughter. So, and also Jason has been a very active and engaged community volunteer. When I found out that Adam was going to ultimately have to retire from council, I reached out to Jason. I recruited Jason because I know him. I know his character. I know he is a person of integrity. He operates with truth and honesty and transparency like the rest of council. And I know he's, again, very active in the community. He is organized and runs the St. Agnes Oktoberfest fair every year. Great event. Always have a blast at that. It's great for our entire community. He's also been very engaged with the fish fries at St. Agnes. And again, I know he's been a long-term soccer coach. Jason chooses to live here. He's got a bachelor's degree from Bellarmine, played soccer at Bellarmine, raised his family here. Has been here about 20 years. Works in the insurance industry. He's a certified insurance counselor, and he works for a business that operates out of Fort Wright. So, he has a lot of vested interest in ensuring that Fort Wright continues to be a great place to live, work, and play. So, again, I'm going to ask you on November 8th, on Election Day, to get out there, vote to reelect all 5 of the incumbents: Jay Weber, Bernie Wessels, Dave Ablen, Margie Witt, and Scott Wall. And I'm going to ask you to vote for Jason Collins. On one final point, we have our audit coming up again. We've had years of very good audits. The auditor will be at our next council meeting. And I just want to remind you, as a resident of Fort Wright, because we try to operate in the most open, honest, transparent way possible, all of the previous audits, all of the budgets, the street improvement plan, and our financial transparency portal, all available from our website. We also share all this information through social media. You can go to that financial transparency portal and see every check that's been written for probably the last 4 or 5 years. I don't remember exactly how far that data goes back, but again, we try to operate with the highest degree of honesty, transparency, and ethics. We're one of there's over 400 cities in Kentucky. There are 36 cities that have achieved the Kentucky League of Cities Certified City of Ethics, and only 5 in Northern Kentucky. Again, credit goes to council and staff. Council has done an amazing job. They're very devoted, very dedicated, very committed to making the city of Fort Wright the best community in Northern Kentucky. To that end, they have allowed me to go out and recruit and retain the best possible staff. We've made significant investments in staff. We've added positions in the police department. We've added positions in the fire department. We go out every year and benchmark against our neighbors to try to figure out where are we at pay-wise, where are we at benefits-wise, and to try to make sure that, again, we've built an environment where people want to come to work, people want to stay here, people want to recruit other employees. It's very difficult to get police and fire personnel at this point. I believe not only are we in the best financial position we've been in my 24 years here, again, no long-term debt. We have enough money in the bank right now to run the city for almost a year with no income. We've got substantial financial reserves. We've got a very conservative investment program, thanks to the Finance Committee, to help make that money work harder, especially when interest rates were lower. That made a big difference. And we've reached out to the bank Republic Bank has been very receptive to working with us and is willing to kick some additional interest in as well. So despite the tax cuts, despite the significant investments in infrastructure and personnel, we continue to have substantial reserves. And I can tell you, I will be calling on the next council to look hard at possible additional tax cuts, whether it's insurance tax cuts or more property tax cuts, because property values have gone up. In fact, we're very blessed. Property values have gone up almost, well, I don't remember the percentage offhand, but it's almost $150 million in the last 10 years. And because of savvy operational practices, great staff who treats the money like it's their own, comes in under budget, we are just very blessed and in an amazing position. And it's all because we have an amazing council team. Again, I cannot strongly encourage you enough to reelect Bernie Wessels, Jay Weber, Margie Witt, Dave Ablen, Scott Wall, and then to add Jason Collins to this awesome team. With that, I'm going to stop talking here and say thanks for listening. I would ask you to share this with your friends and neighbors and people who can vote in Fort Wright. And I just want to say thank you for the privilege to serve as mayor here in my hometown. It really is an honor and a privilege. I'm very fortunate to be in such a great community with so many people and so many people that are willing to give back to the community. Thank you. God bless. And be sure to vote on November 8th.